Hello, we are here with our alumni, Joe Koo, who is visiting campus after about a year away on his job after graduating last year. Hi, Joe. It has been a while since you have been to campus.
Yes.
How long has it been now?
Well, when I was moving to Iowa, I stopped by in the middle of summer, so that makes it a little less than a year, so maybe 10 months or so.
Great.
Yeah, but it's flown by.
Why are you visiting campus today?
Yeah, so I'm visiting because the club that I pulled out of COVID, the Horticulture Club, is doing their third spring plant fair. So it's a good circle because the people who are running the club, who are like the president, vice president, they were people I interviewed maybe 3 years ago when I was trying to expand and try to bring it to them life. So it's really nice to see that they've come this far, and a lot of them have grown into their leadership positions, and it's really nice to see like my head grower who I trained last year. I mean, her plants look really amazing, which is pretty impressive because it's not many college students that can grow plants to that scale, and it's basically commercial level. So
that
it's
is
impressive. So that's why I'm here.
I am so glad to hear it. Tell us a little bit more about the Hort Club for people who haven't heard about that before.
Yeah, so the Horticulture Club was founded very close to when the Horticulture Department was founded. So that's maybe early 1900s, and they've held a flower show for many, many years, from like 1900s into, I think the last flower show that was held was like 2018 or 2017 or something. And then after COVID hit, a lot of the people were sent home, and we kind of lost touch on how to run that. So there were a few years where we didn't do anything. And Horticulture Club, or horticulture and gardening in general, was something that was really dear to my heart. So it was like, man, it's a bummer that it's gone. But I guess in another way, it was good because it was kind of like starting from a blank canvas. So coming in freshman year, I met Dr. Faber-Taylor, who was the Hort Club advisor at the time. And they did have an exec board, and they did a couple of events, but it was like pumpkin carving and bath bombs, and not really horticulture focused, but the social aspect for the club was there. But I guess the whole thing started it was in my sophomore year. An extension agent in a nearby county said that she had come across a bunch of old seed that was about to be thrown out by a nursery because it's past the sell-by date. So, I mean, they can't really do anything with it. So she salvaged it. She asked them if she could have them, and then she asked if our department needed any, and I was like, okay, sure, we'll take the seeds. We'll see how they grow in the greenhouse. So we sowed a bunch of seeds. There were like random ones, like basil, tomato, and some flowers. Whatever there was. But I mean, I was just, maybe there was hope for the flower show and we could revamp it or something. But yeah, the seeds did grow. We got quite a few. I think there was maybe 1,000 or 2,000 plants that we were able to get to sellable value.
That is a lot of plants.
It is a lot of plants, but there were like 100 packets of seeds. So it was pretty awesome to see those grow. And when I saw that, they were like, wow, these are sellable plants. Organize the first spring plant fair. We wanted to kind of step away from the flower show because that was like, no one knows how to do that.
Not anymore.
They shipped orchids from Florida. They got fully grown, turf sod and stuff, and they had whole garden displays. And I mean, we'll start small coming out of COVID. So that was kind of my thinking. But that event was a huge success. I think
I can imagine, like you sell down for $1 a piece. That is a couple of $1,000s for the club for you.
Exactly, yeah. And then it was on Mom's weekend, and of course, moms love buying their plants. So I mean, the need and the clientele was there. So I mean, it was just bringing the public what they want, basically.
Absolutely.
So it was held in the Plant Sciences laboratory, and the halls were they were shoulder to shoulder. So we were like, okay, this is not sustainable. We got to expand. So the year after, we took it a little more seriously. We bought our own seeds. We bought plugs, and we dug up some divisions from perennials outside, and we rented out like maybe 2 greenhouse rooms. And then that was like, yeah, this has potential, and we held at the Stock Pavilion, and that was last year. And then this year they're doing it again. Just that I'm not there helping. I'm just there to help out, following marching orders from the current president and
seeing your baby grow.
Yeah, so I'm like retired, I guess you could say. But it's really good because like I mentioned, I interviewed all of them when I was trying to first bring the club back to life, and they really filled out into their positions. So that was really, really nice to see. But yeah, I guess. Like for me, it was a really good experience because it's not every day you can take something and grow it into something else, something that's a lot bigger. especially one that's, grows revenue. We were able to take just, a seed donation from 3 years ago, and then now we're generating like more than $10,000 a year for the club.
That is
so
really good, isn't it?
Yeah, and then we can, do that to further our mission on campus. Like on quad day, we grow 700 succulents and just give them out for free. And then each of those are what, $4 or $5 a pop, and people are taking them home with our QR codes. Like, hey, just all you need to do in return is come to our meetings.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was really nice to see. But that was definitely the biggest experience I got out of the club, is just how to lead and how to drive something and make it bigger.
Have
year
you
after year.
imagined that it was going to be that big?
I did not.
No?
There was no way I could have imagined anything like that. I mean, the reason I came onto there was because Dr. Faber Taylor, who was my professor for Hort 100 at the time, she was like, hey, the horticulture club needs a little bit of help because they're just coming out of COVID and they don't really know what they're doing. So maybe you could help them, be a part of the figuring out process. And I was like, all right, sure. So being a gardener, of course, I wanted to be a grower, but that position was already filled. So I actually came on as secretary. But as secretary, I just, first I started off writing emails, and I realized that, we're not doing that many events. Maybe I could lead a few. So led a few more events. And then slowly but surely, like, maybe our first event we had like 10, 12 people. And then the year after we went up to 20, 30. And then the year after that is just exponential growth from there.
That is amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
That is actually a good segue into talking about why were you in Hort 100 or into a CS Plus student?
Yeah, so I actually chose Illinois because I was really passionate about fruit and vegetable breeding. So that's kind of what my head was at going into college, and a lot of the colleges I applied to were land-grant universities that had agricultural programs, and Illinois was, they're pretty renowned in that space. So I was like, all right, yeah, that's awesome. And they grow a lot of corn and soybeans here, as many people know. So that's how I ended up in Illinois in the first place. So my original major was horticultural food systems in the crop science major. Yeah, so that's why I was in Hort 100. And then as part of that, I had to, I guess, take chemistry as well.
Right.
So I ended up taking organic chemistry and really loved organic chemistry. And then I applied for a TA position and did that for 3 years. So that was my, I guess, on-campus job during my undergrad time. But yeah, and then I guess maybe sophomore year or something, I guess the time frame is kind of fuzzy, but at some point I realized that technology has a really big influence in every sphere, including crop science. And I realized that conveniently there was a crop science plus a computer science program here. So I was like, all right, let's see if they take me. And then I met with I think it was Erica, who's the undergraduate recruiter. And yeah, I joined the CS+CS program, and then horticulture I declared as a minor, as well as chemistry too. So yeah, that was my journey into computer science plus crop science.
That sounds like an awfully busy schedule, isn't it?
Yeah, it was pretty busy, but I think the Illinois has a lot to offer, opportunity-wise. Like a lot of people are worried about what am I going to do outside of school. You can go to a research lab, and if people who are telling you that there's no research lab positions, that's a lie. Just cold email them, and then yeah, they'll be happy to either talk to you or you can shadow them. Yeah, so the opportunities are all there. So.
Yeah, I mean there are a lot of opportunities, but it may be overwhelming for somebody who's just starting, right?
Yeah.
You seem to have actually an opinion and an idea about what you wanted to do. You were a gardener, you were involved with horticulture, you're very socially active in gathering the groups and the people together. At the end of the day, there is a heavy workload that is required of the students at the same time, though.
Yeah.
How did you balance the whole social aspects and research aspects of everything together with the classes?
I think I just really enjoyed what I was doing. Like the classes, yes, they were tough. Like I spent many nights at Granger working on CS projects, or I was working in the lab, but it was all like I could see the end goal, which was, improving cropping systems using technology, right? So whenever I did a CS project, if I could tie it into agriculture, I did that, right? And then in the CS department, or in the crop science department, if I ever worked on a research project, it was like, oh, this is working on disease resistance. I think one summer, actually, I think this was maybe around the time I transferred to CS+CS. I took an internship at the Boyce Thompson Institute.
Yep.
And then that was really insightful because I was able to merge that chemistry background with plant science. So my research project that summer was using dipeptides of amino acids to see if we could reduce plant stress as just plant metabolites. So that was a really good merging of two domains, and I was like, okay, there is definitely a need here where you need to know CS, which helps significantly with data analysis, and also knowledge about chemistry and how molecules interact inside plants and stuff.
Right.
So I didn't pursue that route because I realized working in a wet lab was not for me.
It's tough, isn't it?
Yeah, but it was definitely a really good experience into what academia is like. So
that is great. So what was your favorite class that you have taken over here?
Ooh, I have quite a few. So yeah, that's a good question. I'll think about that one. I guess I could divide it into the main disciplines that I studied in college. So in the horticulture front, it was definitely greenhouse production.
Okay.
So I took that last spring, and that one is really great because you get an insight into what greenhouse commercial operations are like, and that's not something a lot of people can do. And it's for a lot of people, it's like you just join a greenhouse, work as a entry-level grower, and then you get experience that way. But in this class, they went over how can you time annuals to be blooming at a certain period so they can be sent out to big box stores. We toured a commercial greenhouse, and they have everything automated. I'm sure a lot of people at home are thinking, oh, there's probably people just sowing seeds like this, filling pots. Nope, it's you just feed it through a machine, it fills a tray, plants some seeds, and then it goes to an automated pallet. You don't see it. You maybe check on it, but you don't really interact with it until it's a finished product.
Exactly, and somebody builds those systems, and writes software for them too.
Exactly,
right?
Yeah, to see watering schedules for climate control, all that, figuring out when to get to flower. That's all in the future it's going to be AI, but as of now, there's people working on software so growers can just look on a tablet and be like, okay, greenhouse bay B needs to be flowering in 5 months. Let's slowly take down the temperature by a couple degrees. So yeah, that class definitely gave a really good insight into that sphere, and also on the chemistry side of plants, where what do the pH levels need to be for certain plants? How can you
change the appearance of the flowers by pH?
Flowers by pH, or what do some nutrient deficiencies look like? Hopefully in the future, that can be all used with machine learning, but you can't just have a machine learning model without someone training the data or having the expertise to be able to train the data or train the model to be able to recognize those things. So that's where I kind of saw it was like, you do need computer science knowledge to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, so that's the horticulture side. On the chemistry side, it was organic chemistry 2. That class I really liked because they tied organic chemistry in with a lot of real life applications, like a lot of cancer treatment drugs. Yeah, the reasons why they work is because they're able to bind DNA a certain way. And those compounds are synthesized using a lot of organic chemistry routes. Some of them developed in 1950, some of them developed last year. So you never know, and that was really cool to see that, it's not just molecules, and it's really how they interact and how humans can leverage that to do amazing things. And even in the crop science world, organic chemistry I know there's a lot of professors working in that to see if certain chemicals can cause plants to behave a certain way.
Yeah.
And, believe it or not, there's computer science in that too, right? There's, absolutely. I think, you've heard of the protein folding model. The accuracy is increasing every single year. And it does take a lot of interdisciplinary knowledge to do that.
It takes a lot to get it done. Yeah, the AlphaFold models, they're just getting better and better, and them getting better is not really owing to AI getting better. It is us being able to actually capture the essence of biology in the code that we're actually building. Talking about that, 2 days ago, I was actually covering the DNA wobble, the redundancy central dogma in my multivariate data analytics class. And I have CS students, like pure CS students in the class, because it's a project-based class that is actually, integrating the biological data analytics and together with the kind of systems that you can build around them. And I showed up that graph that you have that starts with the 4-letter code and then expands out, the radial diagram, the circular graph.
Sure.
And, they were all on top of the math about, how can you use a 4-letter alphabet to actually encode these 21 amino acids, et cetera, et cetera. But the thing that was really hard to explain is that the letter codes that we're using, and that is all they are seeing, actually refers back to these chemical structures, these molecules.
Right.
And those molecules have variability in them as well, although we classify them into these smaller groups that we're working with. So you had that unique experience of seeing that molecular structure first before seeing those representations in code of how they are represented.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point where kind of domain knowledge comes into CS, where if you just take someone from the CS department, you can't just expect them to build an accurate model. Like one example that comes to mind is hybridization of plants, right? For example, so I work like at an orchid nursery now, and I've been learning the ropes of how a commercial operation works. But before he did that, he was a commercial. The guy I worked with was a commercial orchid breeder, and although you can breed different genre together and make crosses like that, there's some incompatibilities where, maybe you can write a model that can look at a flower and be like, okay, if you cross that with this, then you'll get this phenotype, or maybe its parents are 60% this or 70% that. But to an orchid person, it's like, well, that species is not compatible with this one. They branched completely two different evolutionary trees, right? So it's kind of things like that where you can't expect a model to be able to recognize that difference. It's something a human has to do, or manipulate the data and, toggle the features.
Make the model aware of the fact.
Exactly.
Right? But you need to know about it before you can make the model aware of the fact.
But on the other hand, a traditional orchid breeder, their approach is for traditional breeding is I'll cross this too, and we'll grow 100 orchid seeds, and in 3 years we'll figure out what the flowers look like, right? I mean, there's a complete disconnect. So that's where I think the CS+CS program really shines.
That is brilliant.
And I'm sure that can be applied to soybeans, corn, and everything. So
everything.
Yeah.
So that is another question of mine that we actually, as the faculty at the department, have been investigating. Did we teach you enough genetics? Do you feel your background and information is adequate in order to understand those crossing, hybridization, etc. that we just talked about?
I think it's tough for the CS+CS program because you're trying to merge kind of two fields, right? So obviously you're not going to get a complete CS background or a complete crop science knowledge background. So like, for example, I never took a genetics course, and the information I did have was either when I worked in a corn genetics lab in freshman year, or it was from like an intro level class. But because a lot of mine were focused on biochemistry and organic chemistry, I took Dr. Lambert's chemistry for biological systems. That's how I learned about the shikimic acid pathway. That's how I learned about the chemistry side of it. So I think work can be done like to incorporate genetics and different fields of crop science, but it would be a lot certainly to have a student be expected to know genetics and chemistry and micro interaction, soil, things like that. So
we have this idea that we may be able to actually build a curriculum for you all to integrate the CS techniques into their application in our domain. So, for instance, nematodes, the soil pathogens that we actually work with, they're a big problem with the soybeans. We have a version of it called C. elegans that actually is a model organism that you can use in the lab. So it would be possible to teach the CS+ students who would like to learn about computer vision to take this lab to actually use the computer vision techniques to learn about nematode behavior.
Yeah.
Right? And nematodes being another model organism for genetics, we can actually design and devise additional experiments for you to not just observe them, but make crosses, understand how they're developing. What do you think? Is that a good idea? Do you think there would be, attention to that kind of class?
Yeah, I think there definitely would be. Of course, I guess the projects-wise, right? It'll have to be something more than importing TensorFlow keras to a Python and just clicking run. But like the nematode example, right? There's different development stages, like J1. I think I forgot. I took it. It's been a while, but kind of working with the data too, kind of like annotating them. A lot of people realize that, or don't realize that, data manipulation is at the heart of machine learning. It's not just training the model. You need, it's kind of like trash in, trash out, right? If you feed it good data, you'll get good model results. If you just feed it bad data, right? So that would be worth it, where a student could just sit there and, identify what are the stages. That's that's the domain knowledge that they'll need. And then how can you use that annotation to train a really good model to identify development stages? And then you can use that model to, build upon kind of what you're saying with, whatever you like.
What would you like to know?
Yeah,
Crossing.
whatever. The possibilities are endless, but it really just starts there, where they're able to do that domain knowledge area and then tie it in with the computer science.
So tell us where you are right now and what are you up to? Where did life take you?
Sure. Yeah. So I work for John Deere now. So I'm in their engineering development program. So it's a very corporate-esque environment. Actually, it is literally a corporate-esque environment.
Corporate environment.
Yeah. So it's in a rotational program. So they have me doing 8-month rotations 3 times. So my first one was test automation engineering. That's really big because a lot of the time people need to go out on machines and test them in the field. And for example, combines, they can only be tested outside once a year during harvest. But if you're able to run it on a simulator and automate tests to run overnight or on breaks or whatever, we can have higher turnaround on software payloads and releases. So whenever a new feature whenever someone develops a new feature for it, it can be tested and released very quickly. So that was my first rotation working in that. And then 2-3 weeks ago, I rotated to my second rotation, and that's working on a newer technology called combine automation. So we're basically trying to keep the engine load at 100% to optimize runtime of our machines. So instead of a farmer, they can probably scan the field manually and toggle the machinery that way. It might take them a little bit longer than if we have an algorithm to look at the field and be like, okay, we need to engine speed at 3 miles per hour, 4 miles per hour. So that's kind of what I'm working on now. It's a lot of C++ coding, and
that is wonderful.
Yeah, but it's definitely interesting work that John Deere is doing in that field to automate just how we run farms. Because eventually there's not going to be a farmer in a combine, and you just sit there and look at their tablet and watch their fleet run. So
it is hard to actually coordinate those things because the harvest time is one of those really, really busy times of the year, and the machinery is expensive and hard to come by. So optimizing your speed of harvest depending on the field density is actually a brilliant precision technology that can have a lot of impact.
And then just being at the company, I've just been exposed to a lot of the different engineering technologies that are being applied to agriculture. For example, See and Spray, I'm sure you've heard about that one. In high-value crops such as grapes, they're doing volume-based spraying. That was another one I learned about. I think it's one of their subsidiaries called Smart Apply, but they'll use LiDAR to scan a row, 2 rows of grapes or whatever. It can be anything, like almond trees or whatever. And then based on the volume of foliage they have, they'll be able to spray droplets of whatever pesticide they need. And then that way, a farmer doesn't have to run through. And then it actually toggles the amount of pesticide gets applied based on the volume, right? So you're able to save a lot of pesticide in that respect as well, and it's cost savings too.
Yeah, the mapping and the density calculations are all based on LiDAR these days, isn't it? And your first introduction to LiDAR data was when you were working with the TerraF project, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so LiDAR is definitely, sensors, like I said, data is at the root of everything, right? You can be really good at training a model, but if you have bad data, where's that going to get you? But LiDAR is really great. I've also been able to work with stereo cameras to kind of judge depth and things like that. So yeah, I've been able to work on all of those.
Feeling good?
Yeah. So those are all experiences that undergrads should have before going to industry at least.
Yeah, that was the question that I actually wanted to wrap around to. Is there anything that you wish you have learned that you didn't know when you started your job?
Yeah, I think you mentioned this, but knowing how to navigate your way around corporate, that was a big one. For example, just being plunged into an enterprise environment, there was a lot of office politics that I had to learn. Thankfully, I had some good mentors. I got to make some good mentors in my first rotation, so that was good. But not everyone's going to have that, right? So knowing that and how enterprise works differently from an academia-driven environment. I think you've seen yourself that the paces are completely different. How they do things is different. How teams are organized are very different. So just knowing that is gonna, you can just dive into your work when you get there instead of them having to train you. I think that's that's a big cost on the company, trying to train, fresh people right out of college.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's not how we do things here. That might be how you did things in college, but at enterprise level, I mean,
Everything is different.
we need to, report to shareholders. There's no such thing as extensions or anything.
Yeah.
So that was one thing. And kind of how to build your own brand, I think, is a big one. You need to be able to set yourself apart, I realize, in corporate, because
Otherwise, you get lost in the crowd.
yeah, exactly. So building a network is really big. Knowing how to present yourself in an interview, and then even while you have a job, how to stay connected with new technologies that arise. If you were in a software job in 2018, just stayed there for 6 years and didn't learn any AI, you're behind now, right?
Exactly.
So,
You can't really do that. Like throughout my career, it is a continuous struggle to actually keep ahead of technology and what's actually happening. I mean, I was counting the other day for the classroom to mention I am in my 10th or 11th programming language for the same work that I have been doing since I, was your age.
Sure.
But, it is one of those things that if you are not willing to learn, you're not going to be able to stay ahead of the technology. That is the reality of the age that we live in. There's not much else to it. Yet at the same time, where do you learn what you need to learn? You're not at school anymore.
That's a good question. So a lot is just learning from people who are in my organization. I think it's really good to find people who you can talk with, who can kind of be mentor figures. Just like reaching out to both managers, peers who are on the same level, seeing like what kind of work they're working on, how your work fits into that company. Because a company, I mean, there's going to be a lot of tools that you've never heard of, so that's a good starting point. So yeah, and then I mean, resources online, and there's many of them that you can learn on your own time. It does take a little bit of self-motivation, I'll say that, but it exists. So I mean, if there's a will, there's a way for that one. So, yeah.
Yeah, if you want to learn. How about your work-life balance? How do you feel about that?
I think it's pretty good. So, I mean, after work, I've been involved in the community garden. Of course, I kind of got to stay connected to that plant side for me. So I took the Master Gardener class in Iowa. So now I'm working on volunteer projects around Des Moines.
Yay.
So helping out community gardens. Like last fall, I helped harvest apple trees. Last Saturday, I was pruning all the apple trees too. So up on the ladders, honing my pruning techniques. So yeah, I mean, it's just crazy to think that in the future it's probably gonna be automated. It's just
we can try, but like pruning is one of those things that
I mean, there were some things 10 years ago that they thought were impossible. So I mean, I have faith, but yeah, as for now, it's good to have some pruning skills.
See. Like you guys' lives are going to be even more fraught with all these technology disruptions and new things that are coming around than I experienced in my 20 years. It's going to be insane.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
It is exciting, isn't it?
It really is, yeah.
So when I was talking to the high school students 2 days ago, one thing that they were actually asking was about the ethics aspects of all these AI and machine learning landscape. And they were somewhat surprised when I told them it is not the AI that needs to be ethical, it is the programmers.
Yes.
What are your thoughts in that space?
I mean, AI is definitely a tool. Like our company has embraced AI, thankfully. So instead of taking a week to debug something, you just run a script, and then I mean, a lot of people think it's going to replace your job, but it's just you got to kind of adapt to the times and use it as a tool. I mean, they're not going to be able to replace the programmer who's able to have domain knowledge and be able to contextualize a problem, right? They can just look at a script, be like, okay, I mean, based on these scripts I have in my data, I mean, this one needs this change, right? But as far as ethics go, it definitely is based on the programmer and also somewhat on the user as well. But it's certainly a technology that's not going away, and if you do kind of reject it, you're going to be left behind.
I know, right?
So I mean, like there's a lot of companies that rejected the change to going online to internet and subscription-based services, and a lot of them are, they're not doing very well now, and some of them are gone.
Yeah.
And it's really the other companies that have embraced that technology that have kind of risen up. So yeah, it's definitely not going away, but for sure, knowing how to use it well, and especially programmers, like you said, knowing how to create good models that really do beneficial work is going to be really important.
That needs to be trained properly, right?
Yes.
I mean, my word for it, and people like using that a lot, AI is a glorified calculator at the end of the day, and you need to use it like you would use a calculator, as opposed to, you know, your mentor or advisor. It is not intended to serve that role. Yet again, you know, I think the misperception is, again, our fault, because we're not putting the correct information out there. And I feel like interviews like this, and when we actually make it available to the public, is going to help us step forward in that direction a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just the speed at which it was adopted. I mean, GPT came out and it changed everything. And it's just, I mean, I'm sure the software devs are pulling all-nighters over there, so yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you, Joe, for coming and sharing your insights and stories with us today. How about we head over to the Stock Pavilion and see how the Hort Club is doing. Thank you.